This is Beyond the Bell Tower, where an elite group of North Carolina State University students give us a behind-the-scenes look at their steps to success and show us how they attain even their lofty goals. These students, who are in the top 10% of the country, are active in student support services at NC State, a nationally recognized program designed to provide support for low-income, first-generation college students. Nationally, this population has an 11% graduation rate within 6 years. The Student Support Services students surpass that rate each year and go on to become doctors, dentists, accountants, and engineers. They work at Google, Apple, and the NCAA. They have earned PhDs at Ivy League colleges. These students go well beyond the bell tower to reach this level of success.
Welcome to Beyond the Bell Tower. We are here with Joelle Fuchs, and she is a soon-to-be graduate.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Yes, she will. There's no hoping about it. We'll make sure it happens, regardless of anything, for sure.
So many things.
Well, we'll get into some of them, I think, today. So Joelle has been in TRIO since her first semester, first year. Mm-hmm. So that was 4 years ago. How many years ago was that?
August 2014.
Okay, yeah. So
4 years.
4 years.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be talking about a bunch of different things because in the past 4 years, Joelle has accomplished a tremendous amount. And I really think it's important for everybody, one, for Joelle to talk about all that she's accomplished, because it's important for all students to share everything that they've done and to be proud of it. Humbleness is not productive and doesn't benefit you in any way. And so probably that's actually what this is an exercise in, is Joelle telling the truth about everything that she's done, that she's not bragging, just telling the truth. So there's a bunch of different things that have led to Joelle's success. And so we're going to talk about each of those things. Hopefully she'll share with us.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's why she's here, right? And there's a couple of other interesting experiences that she's had, and so we're going to get into that right now. But where do you want to start, Joelle? Where are you from?
So I grew up in Greensboro, and then I lived there since fourth grade. Before that, I lived in New York. My family moved to North Carolina. It's weird because I was still really young, but there was an incident with our neighbors, and they sent us hate mail and kind of did a lot of things to our home. So we packed up and left. And then I moved to Greensboro. I lived there until I came to college. Yeah.
And then what are you majoring in? What are you doing here?
So I'm a bio major now. I was always a bio major, but for 3.5 years, I was a biological sciences major with a concentration in neurobiology. And then I switched last semester, maybe 2 semesters ago.
Two.
Yeah, to the BA in bio. And I made my focus and my concentration social and biological determinants of mental health. And it kind of gave me a more interdisciplinary approach to assessing factors that influence people's mental health and what that looks like. And I kind of was able to tailor my education to my interests and not have to do all these extra bio classes that didn't really have a basis to me for education.
Yeah, it was a win-win.
Yeah, honestly, yeah.
Now, that's an actual minor on the record? Is this
social? It's all one major.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, but what's your minor?
I don't have a minor. Yeah.
Oh, your concentration. So your concentration, you were able to choose yourself?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice.
So you have to pick you have to talk about. It's kind of I say concentration, but it's kind of sort of what's your second discipline. So it's a BA, but then there's a bunch of cross-discipline electives you take, and then those cross-discipline electives are supposed to be some area or some field that you want to merge with bio. But mine ended up being sociology and psychology. So, yeah.
And that's an actual field of study and research? Or are you an original? Which you were always an original. But...
the work exists, but I think there's still kind of a lack of a merge between all of those fields. Yeah. Like bio and soc, kind of, that's not really, I haven't really seen that a lot. I mean, right. I've read a couple books, like textbooks on medical sociology, but yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of like medical anthropology.
Right.
But
right.
Yeah. But I think that's really cool to know is that when you're choosing a major, that because your career goal is to go on to do scientific research, to earn a PhD and do scientific research, that you can get a biology bachelor's of arts degree and do that.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to have the bachelor's of science.
Yeah, definitely.
So why did that work best for you?
Because, well, it was a bunch of different things. Like, one, the major fit me perfectly, but it was still a new major. Like, it's still a really new major. Yeah. But two, I was struggling with a lot with my classes, which I know we'll probably talk about later, but I withdrew 2 whole semesters. And so in terms of credits taken, I should have graduated like a year ago, but with me retroactively withdrawing, that whole year didn't count. So it was kind of me assessing what I wanted to study, knowing I had multiple interests, not taking time off, but losing that whole year of work, and then trying to like so basically everything all just kind of like happened to work out. So after it
worked out because you're extremely committed, compassionate, and smart.
Yeah, that too. That definitely played a part. But I wanted it to be the neurobio major with a minor in psychology. And then after everything happened, I still had the psychology credits, but I wasn't done with the neurobio. And then I was able to switch it. And then all my psych credits counted towards the BA major. And then I also could take other classes that tailored to like mental health. But we don't even really have mental health courses here. So I took like all of the mental health courses that we have. Yeah.
Well, and I think it's important is that finding the right major for like everything else that's going on in your life.
Yeah.
But you still need to keep earning your degree. And so the major may have to alter a little bit so that it can, so I think it's like when people which I'm not sure if you went through this, but when you're like a sophomore and you're kind of stuck, like, I have to have this bachelor's of science degree, or I can't do anything in my career path.
Yeah, I was like that actually. And also it was like the field itself, like, which is kind of bad, but I was hesitant to switch out of neurobio because I was like, yeah, like it's neuroscience. But honestly, if you like look at there was only one neurobio course here, and I took it. So it's not even like I took what basically differentiated that core, like that specific discipline of neurobio, like of biology from the other ones, like human bio and all those things. So honestly, at the end of the day, I think as you go on later in your college career, you just realize it's not even that deep. Like,
right.
It's just a degree, like, which is awesome. It's great that it's a degree, but it's just a title. Like, it's not what you learn is more important, not what it is. If it's a bachelor's of arts or a bachelor's of science,
right? So let's go into like what you've learned, because you've done some amazing things while you've been here that happened even though you had to retroactively withdraw from 2 semesters. It happened even though you had to transfer majors.
Yeah.
So what was the first kind of career-related, kind of engaging experience that you had that really impacted your life, career?
So I took a course with Dr. Simpson. So Dr. Jamila Simpson, who is an amazing, amazing, amazing person. If you don't know her, please get to know her. She is amazing. I took her freshman advancement seminar course when I was a freshman. So it's basically they have freshmen, like incoming freshmen who are underrepresented in the College of Sciences are like enrolled into her course. And then these students take that course, and it counts for your USC credit. And in that course, she kind of just exposes you to different topics in navigating it, like it's sort of like skills, but also life lessons about things that don't only apply to college, but apply to your life, and understanding diversity and understanding things like that. And then she also had like an alumni dinner, and at that dinner is when I met Jamal.
Who Jamal Moss is. His story is on episode 1.
Yeah, also super amazing. And he was neurobio, and he talked about neurobio, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's why I applied here. Like, that's what I wanted to do. And I talked to him at the dinner, but he wasn't an alum yet, so he was still a student, but he talked about his experience in doing research. Because I think it was a segment of the dinner where students could talk about things that had helped them. And he talked about research. And I was like, whoa, that's so cool. So somebody else at the dinner, Miss Sierra, she was part of this program called the IMSD program. And so as soon as I found that out, and she was like, oh, applications are still open, I applied. And this is in like November, maybe? Mm-hmm. So I was only like a couple months into college, and I applied, and I got in. Yeah. So December is when I officially got into IMSD, which was Initiative for Maximizing Student Diversity and Development. And it's a research initiative that it takes underrepresented students and exposes them to research, and they get the opportunity to do research. And I've been doing that since. So for 4 years now, or 3.5 years. Yeah. And I've jumped. So I originally started in psychology lab with Dr. Hess, and that was kind of on decision making and like aging. And it was really cool. And I was in it for a year, but I was still a bio major. But I knew, I was like, the limited knowledge of research I knew, I was like, bio is like lame. Like, I don't like it. Like, I don't want to do bio research. Like, I don't care about some protein. Like, stuff like that. I was super naive. And so I avoided doing bio research. I liked the psych aspect. Then later on, I was like, I couldn't really like apply the psych research to my interests. And so I went back to Dr. Erin Banks, who was the director of the program, and talked to her about switching labs. And then I ended up joining a lab with Dr. Heather Padazal, who ended up being my mentor until now. She's still my PI. And in her lab, we do neurobehavior, and it's sort of like brain development, doing environmental toxins and different things like that. She is extremely well known in her field for the research that she does, and she's an awesome woman. And I've enjoyed everything. So I actually overlapped in both those labs for a whole summer, and then I ended up leaving the other lab when the next semester started. And then I stayed in Dr. Padazal's lab. And then over the summer, I'm still working with Dr. Padazal now, but then I also joined a lab with Dr. Alon Hope, another extraordinary woman. And in her lab, it's community psychology, and the projects I kind of worked on was with families, and it's called the Black Families Project, and understanding relationships and different factors. I was sort of like playing with data sets and understanding like how different factors might play a role in the relationships that people build.
So when you're doing like the different research, so was the bio research that you were doing, that you're still doing, was that as boring as you thought it was going to be, like with proteins?
No, I lucked out. Oh my gosh. And Jamal was actually in that lab, so that was awesome too. Like, we reunited. And it was not at all what I thought it would be. And it had, there were like implications that like real implications that I could talk about and I understood. So it was kind of like a great,
what was the study?
So I started originally on this study called, it was about this drug given to women. It was called DES, in like the 70s. And it was basically it was a synthetic estrogen. And during that time, like, doctors were thinking, you know, estrogen's the hormone that we really need to give pregnant women to maintain pregnancy, which is not true. It's progesterone. But because of this, a lot of women were prescribed it, and it was on a lot of things. Like, even if they weren't directly prescribed it, like, a lot of women were like, had taken it, and that it ended up having all these like complications with these women. 2 young girls ended up having this cancer that was like, it's for one, it's a rare cancer, and 2, you only really find it in older women.
Yeah.
So these 2 really young girls are like in their 20s, like ended up getting it.
Who were pregnant? Or
no,
who had given birth?
No, their mothers had taken DES.
Oh,
so
okay.
Yeah, it was like this. It was like some really strange thing happened, and then like all these reports coming out. These 2 girls had it, and then the doctors had to like trace their medical history, and they found that their mothers were given that drug.
Yeah.
And so like then there became this whole thing. Like everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, like
yeah,
it's dangerous and it's the wrong thing." So I looked at that for a little bit on like in rats on behavior. And then after that, I joined a project on BPA and understanding how it might alter, like their sexual dimorphic, like the sexual differences in the brain in rat brains. So BPA, it's estrogenic in structure, and so it was cool to study this because we want to see if there was an effect in sort of like brain anatomy. So one way to do this would be, there are certain areas of the brain that are sexually dimorphic. So, let me think of an example. Sexually dimorphic nucleus is bigger than in males than female rats. We ended up publishing a paper on it, and talking about these effects. But there were effects, but you should definitely check out my paper.
So how did that publishing go? Like, were you 3rd author, 4th author mentioned in the notes? Like, how does that work for undergraduate researchers?
Right. So I was lucky enough that I was put on the publication, but I was 2nd author, and
which is a huge deal.
I was 2nd author, and there was a PhD student who I was working with who also Dr. Cheryl Arambula, who she's a doctor now, and it's amazing. But I worked under her my whole time I was in Dr. Padazal's lab. And so a lot of the stuff I've learned, I kind of learned through her, which I'm super grateful for. But she did like most of the work. Like she did most of the writing and everything. Basically like kind of all the writing. And then I'm 2nd author because it was like our project together. So I did a lot. Although I might not have helped as much in the writing, for her to defend and everything, it was a joint process in terms of the research that we were doing on like the stereology on these different brain areas and like measuring everything and the data analysis and all that stuff.
Now, had you done any of this before coming to NC State?
No, this is my first time.
So, I mean, I think that's the thing. It's like, you don't have to walk into a lab knowing what to do.
Oh, yeah.
Like, did they even expect you to know what to do?
Not at all. I had no idea. We both struggled a little bit on some of these areas. It's all new. It's kind of like you learn on the go. But yeah.
So, like, for a student who's trying to get undergrad research right now, like, how do they sell themselves? Like, what is like kind of like, almost like every trio student possess that the skills to make them successful, even if they don't, haven't done measured, the nucleuses of rat brains?
So I think I kind of sold myself. So one of the things that I usually use to describe myself is passionate. And I know I'm not the brightest student, like, which
well, there's always going to be somebody smarter,
right? I pride myself on like my willingness to learn, so I will always like push I always feel unprepared, so I will like try to over prepare. That's always how I've approached situations. So I'm always willing to learn because I know that I don't know a lot.
No, that's a sign of intelligence. No, I'm dead serious. It's because if you don't know, like if you think you know everything, then your world is very small.
Yeah, that is true.
Because, I mean, the example is the doctors in the 70s. They had no idea what they were doing. Yeah. And it wasn't because they were, weren't intelligent. It's just we know way less than there is to know. And see, that's the thing, too, is like you never would have gone out searching for that type of research.
Right.
But you connected with one professor who then connected you with a doctoral student. And then where did that research lead you to doing your own? Like,
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because that's the thing is like, you were exposed to it, you had no idea about it.
Yeah.
And so then what has that experience led you to your next research project?
So after I worked with Dr. Pata, so last summer I went to Hopkins and
John Hopkins University,
and
which is ranked.
I think it is one. It was in the School of Public Health.
So it's ranked in the top.
Yeah, it's either this number 1 or number 2 for School of Public Health.
Look at that. Number 1 in the nation for public health.
Yeah, and I worked under Dr. Joseph Bressler, and I did something like research I would have never thought I would have done.
So how did you find that opportunity?
So somebody in IMSD, her name was Jakini, she had done the internship a year before, and I heard about it, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. And she ended up like switching what she wanted her major to be after she came back.
Yeah.
And I kind of knew I wanted that experience because we had similar interests. So she was bio, and then she kind of wanted to switch. Like, she was, like, bio-psych minded, too. And then she ended up, like, wanting to go into counseling. And so she's now at, I want to say A&T doing counseling.
Right.
Yeah.
But so now Joelle is going to pass the torch, just like Janini did.
Which I did, yeah.
Yes, who did you recommend?
So I was talking to a student his name is Nick. And he was, so I was connected to him through Mr. Wesley Wade, with the CDC.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, I have a student who wants to do this internship, and I think you did this internship, so just let you know, he wanted to get some pointers. I gave him the pointers, and then I ended up visiting our program director at Hopkins. Mm-hmm. And I was like talking, and then she was like saying people who got accepted, and she was like, oh yeah, that guy got accepted. I was like, oh my god, that's amazing. Yeah.
So you all need to make efforts to meet Joelle. I will give you her contact information.
I am always willing to talk to anybody interested in research. Always. I highly recommend it. Even if you don't think you want it, like, I think a lot of people have the wrong impression about research. They think that it's like the super big thing that you can't do, but it looks like so many, it looks different. It's not just one thing. It's a lot of different things.
Right. So even going back to the research that you were doing in community psychology, regarding African American families.
Yeah.
So what would that research look like? So you're obviously not
it's a lot of
brains.
Yeah, I'm in the lab running analyses. I mean, that's honestly what it is. Or the surveys were collected online, but in that lab we can go out and collect surveys. You interact with people. That's definitely not rat brains at all.
So that's more kind of finding relationships.
Yeah. Definitely working on skills that I still struggle with. Like, my statistics is very rough. I haven't taken that since freshman year. But like I said, you kind of learn on the go. And I've really enjoyed that research with Dr. Hope. I love it. I love it so much. Yeah.
What have you all found so far?
So I kind of did my own thing where I looked at this past summer research symposium, I presented on just different findings, but it's still really early to tell. There are a lot of preliminary stuff, and I didn't even run the correct I ran the correct statistics, but it was bivariate correlations when you need to do a bunch of regressions for stuff. I didn't control for things.
Okay.
But it was more for me to get the experience with the statistics.
Right. But were there any kind of general findings that you agreed with? You were like, yeah, that makes sense, or did something shock you? So it was just understanding it was focused on sort of these racialized genders socialization messages that we give, and then I also was interested in mindsets of parents. So I found that parents who had a negative mindset, or not negative, more fixed, so kind of people don't change, things don't change, were more likely to give they're more likely to give negative of those messages, negative messages about race, negative messages about race and gender.
And then also just
kind of like all women are like this, or
yeah,
or
like
the world's go ahead.
Yeah, stuff like that. Stuff about skin, like light skin is prettier, and like natural hair is ugly. Like black women are as mad, that type of thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they're more likely to give those messages to their kids, and then also just like understanding the relationship between the mindsets that parents have and the influence of how that influences the mindsets of their children.
Mm-hmm. But that's the thing, though, is like where you do have a personal connection to that research.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you haven't shared your identity, but what's your personal connection to that research and like even the impact of those questions?
Yeah.
On you.
So I wanted to look at like depression and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So my personal research interests are kind of these social constructs and how that influences things like mental health, and how people kind of like moved through the world with these stressors in their life, and what that looks like, and if that kind of inhibits and prohibits them to engage in certain things that they would have if they could have, and then also understanding that there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in that whole realm. And so I was actually just talking to Dr. Luberscher today about my capstone paper, which will be on this topic. And yeah, just kind of like assessing that, which I'm still trying to figure out how to assess that, but that's what I'm really, really interested in. Yeah.
And then you also did some amazing work with the alternative service break.
Yeah. So I went to the trip in Guatemala 2 years in a row. The first year I was just a participant, and then the second year I ended up co-leading with one of my old roommates who went on the trip with me the year before. And it was focused on gender issues and understanding how women have kind of created a space for themselves and like picked themselves up from after their war that had like not like I say recent, but it was still fairly recently just ended, and how like the resilience of these women, and it's kind of weird because it was kind of hard to explain their service trip to people, because other people were like, yeah, like we went and we like built homes, and I was like we gave these women like a platform to talk about their experiences,
right?
And I think that's service in itself, but it's which it qualified as a trip, like it was a trip, but I just think that kind of shows like you can serve in different ways, and understanding that. But I loved that trip. Yeah. Those women were extremely powerful. Yeah.
So why do you think because how did you pay for it? Because it's expensive.
Yeah, it is expensive.
Because I know like money deters a lot of people from trying things.
Yeah, I had to apply for like one of the travel grants, and luckily I got it. And then the second year when I was a leader, they like cover some of your trip, and then you have to like come up with the money for the rest of it. But yeah.
So you're able to save up money.
Yeah,
to make the difference, or
I had to save up a lot of money to do that.
Yeah.
It was like I was willing to do this, like not that I wasn't willing the first time, but the first time I didn't know what I was getting into, and then the second time I was willing to save the money. Like I knew I wanted to do it, so I had saved like knowing I had already applied to be a leader later on.
Right.
But that was still like a lot. Like it is kind of an expensive trip. It's not too expensive. Like it's cheaper than you would think, but it's still a lot of money for someone who just does not have money like that.
Right. So when you look at, if you just look at financial aid legally,
right,
like as law, and then you look at like just how the paperwork is set up and the questions and the format that you have to send it in, and the all the opportunities for it to go wrong,
and then them emailing you back saying we need you to send in some additional stuff.
Yeah, and then that additional stuff takes
forever.
4 months.
Yeah,
and then you're trying to do it with the taxes from your parents who are in 2 hours away,
right? Yeah,
and trying to explain to them like how it needs to be done, but then it's like third hand,
right?
It's like
it's a lot
financial
of
aid said you need to do that,
Yeah, it's so many. It's just a lot. Like I just feel like I feel like it's created like that by design, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, there's supposed to just be so many barriers, like, but I think it goes both ways. Like, there's a problem with that, but then there's also a problem with, like, institutions, like, not understanding that there are students who frequently are dealing with things like this and, like, can't do certain things. But then also having to even say, like, the fact that you even have to, like, justify, like, you have to like, constantly justify your case with your situation. Like, you shouldn't have to give out so much personal information and, like, so much of your personal struggle just because it's like, oh, well, I didn't know that, so, like, now I will make it like, not that they would make it easier or, like, harder, but it's just like, why is it that I have to, like, continue to, like, explain the problems that I'm having and, like, having to constantly, like, leave myself vulnerable for people to know all this stuff, because, like, it's just, like, hard, and I think that's hard for, like, it's really hard for me to do that. It's hard. Really hard.
Yeah, I can't even.
Yeah.
Because do you sense, like, well, what do you, I mean, that's the thing. It's like you're in the thick of it right now, and you're upset, your knees shaking.
Yeah, I've been on edge, like, all day. I'm so sorry.
No, don't apologize. I'm just letting people know, like, this is, like, I don't, there is no word. Like, it's not even just difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, difficult is, like, there are things that are difficult, and then there's trying to get access to your financial aid that you depend upon to live.
Yeah, because that's, like, the only reason I even came here. I got offered that Pack Promise, and I was like, all right, cool, because I know for a fact, like, if I didn't get this, I probably wouldn't be in college. And so to be in my last semester and to not, all of the money that I've, like, learned the financial literacy, and so I've saved money, and then now to have spent all of that on my tuition because I'm not offered the aid that I was told I would get. Not that it's, like, the school's fault.
Yeah.
It's with the IRS, but it's just, like, it kind of sucks. And then, like, now my, like, savings is gone. And I'm about to leave. So, like, that was the money I was going to use after I graduated to, like live. And, like, feeling like I can't not work. So this was supposed to be a relaxed semester. I wasn't going to have to work because my aid would have, like, I finally was in a position where I didn't need to have to work while also getting the aid. Like, yeah, and then I got in a car accident. I don't even know if you knew that.
No.
Yeah, so they're fixing my car, and it's $3,300. And I don't really know how that's going to go. I'm hoping that the guy's insurance will cover it, but who knows?
Oh, so it was another person's fault?
Yeah, it was like a weird,
Yeah.
I was driving and then he opened the door while I was, like, going down like, so it just, like, it all happened at once.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know what's going to happen.
And that's the piece I think, like, my big thing with students is that for TRIO, like, this is what we're here for. Like, I'm not going to go into everything, that you can specifically do or ask follow-up question, to ask you to share even more. But it's like, it's a car accident and an issue with a parent's taxes with the IRS that impacts whether you graduate or not.
Honestly, yeah.
Which, that's the piece where, like, for us in TRIO, like, we know that's why our program covers academics, finances, personal, cultural, because it has nothing, like, that's a barrier that has nothing to do with intellectual capacity, commitment, work, have you done everything everybody told you to do?
Right.
Yes, you have. And so I think that's the piece too, is that when you, like, use what they say is, like, an unhealthy or an unproductive, not unhealthy, like, an unproductive coping skill. So you are dealing with a horrible amount of stress that you don't have control. You don't have control over the IRS. You don't have control over this other person's car.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not supposed to stay in bed.
Right. Right. Which is honestly what happened those other 2 semesters. But yeah, like, and it's so hard. And that's why I'm interested in the research I'm interested in. Like, how do you move through a system like this, and then now you're in a place like you're in college, and like, you know, some people feel like you don't even belong in there, and you're in an environment where you are the minority, and while you do have your social circles that you know, that's your family, it's like, how do you like how do you make it? I don't know. Like, that's a lot. How do you make it every day, constantly trying to tell yourself, like, no. I know when I graduate, like, I will honestly cry for a week straight. Like, I keep feeling like everything just keeps happening where I can't graduate. Like, I should have been gone already. Like, I don't, it's just so many things. Like, and now I feel like, and you get to a point where you, like, start to blame yourself. Like, wow, well, if you would just kept it together, and, like, even though, like I wasn't suicidal and, like, really depressed, you know? Like I keep trying to act like I wasn't, and that's why I withdrew. But, like,
right.
If I would just kept it together, I would have been gone already. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's the thing is, you know, depression, anxiety, etc. It's a chronic illness.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like, oh, I was having a hard semester. You're managing a chronic illness in an extremely stressful situation.
Yeah.
Where there was no, like, win-win.
Yeah.
You know, it was lose a little bit less than...
Honestly, it's just trade-offs. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's the thing is, you have, how do you do all of this managing a chronic illness?
Right.
Which you have done.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it didn't look pretty all the time.
It did not.
But,
yeah. Like you said, there's kind of, like, always a risk for unproductive behaviors. I like how you say that. Mine was, like, tattoos and piercings, you know, not going to class.
And that's the thing is, like, you came onto campus and did things.
Right.
So it was like, but not going to class. And I think, like, it's like the nuances that maybe sometimes students, you know, it's like, well, you came onto campus, so why can't you go to class? Like, that's skipping class. It's like, no, there's nuances to, you know, like, how you cope and what you can handle.
Yeah. Because sometimes being on campus was, like, a win in itself. Like, not making it to class. Like, I at least wasn't in my bed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just stuff like that. I feel there are always, like, wins, but the way people tend to see them, like, the majority sees it, is like, well, no, like, you still didn't do it. So it's like, okay, well, if sometimes when other people can't recognize your wins, it's, like, hard for you to recognize your wins. Yeah, definitely.
Is that why you don't recognize the wins? Can you recognize some wins for me? What do you consider wins?
I think, honestly, wins for me are, like, I felt like I've won, like, this last couple of months, even though it's been really crappy, with, like, me kind of detailing, like, the research questions that I have. Like, it's still really hard for me, but I feel validated in my questions. I do think it's something that really needs to be studied, and just knowing that I am valid in these questions and that I have a voice, finding that voice, using that voice. I'm definitely a different person than I was when I came in. Extremely different. My coping is better. I don't have as many, I wouldn't say, like, episodes, but, you know, I don't have my lows as frequently, which was something I was struggling with for, like, at least, like, a year and a half. And I understand my triggers. I think those are all kind of wins.
Yeah, because you can't stop it from happening.
Right.
But you can manage it.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, or even knowing your triggers as to know to what to avoid or what to prepare for.
Yeah.
Knowing that you can't stop, you know, school from happening.
As much as I would like to.
Yeah, I mean, college is stressful, period.
Yeah, honestly.
And so it's like, what can you do to protect your, you know, take care of yourself or protect yourself, knowing you're going into war? And I don't know. I mean, that's my own, like, fatalistic mindset but I don't know if I'm wrong in calling it. It's like, you're going into it, you're battling.
Yeah, honestly. Yeah. I was just I wasn't talking to him, but I emailed the professor today, and I was just like, I'm struggling in your class. Like
Yeah.
I honestly feel like I'm struggling like very very badly.
Mhm.
And I don't want it to be that case. And then it's also like weird. I was asking him like if we could meet up because I wanted to talk to him about it and like see ways I could improve as a student. But it was just like I kind of want to drop it, but it's like this is the one class I need if I want to graduate. Like all of these classes are like my degree is depending on all of these.
Right. But I will go back to where you say that you have to feel like over prepared.
Oh yeah.
So I mean that's the thing is like you're not as prepared as you want to be into class. And so you're freaking out because you're not actually over prepared.
Yeah, it's kind of like so
you may not be doing as well as you want, but
yeah, it's also hard. So it's like there's only 10 of us in the class, and like the 2 people who sit next to me, of course, are like 2 of the smartest people in the course. Like in terms of the material.
How do you know
material
that?
wise? Because they're always like, oh, like let's just make these connections, and I'm just sitting there like, all right, but everyone in the class is really intelligent, though. I will say that. And so I feel like I don't make so. Also, I think part of it is the way I learn, and I'm very aware of how I learn, and like I'm struggling a lot with that class because it's not how I learn, and so I feel like
that's an important point. Yeah.
Yeah. It's been really hard for me. And then I can't over prepare because it's not like it's
like your preparation doesn't work.
Yeah.
Or isn't effective for this class.
Yeah, because it's like the course isn't even like we have a textbook. Like there's no it's research articles.
Right.
And like coming up with questions from these research articles.
Right.
And like like it's hardcore research stuff, which I'm glad I'm doing it, but it's like it's hard for me because the way I learn, it's like it's gonna take me at least like 2 days, maybe, if like this is all I was dedicating my time to really like read through the articles, like understand everything and understand the field, because the way I learn is that I have to understand different aspects of it and make connections. And so I can't do that. And like I also have other classes that are reading intensive. Like I can't do it.
Right. You can.
Yeah.
You feel.
Yeah, I feel like I can't. Yeah.
Right. The can't is a feeling, which is a valid feeling.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
And it's scary because I enjoy the class, but it's like I dread going now because I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. Like, I want to drop it, but I don't. Like, I would love to know that I've like made it through the course, but I'm just it's hard with this, like dealing with the fact that I know that I have to over prepare. Like that's hard for me.
Right.
Yeah.
So where does that over preparation come from? Does that go
imposter syndrome?
I was gonna. Great connection. Thank you for sharing it.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So I feel, and that goes along with like me feeling invalidated in a lot of things. This idea of imposter syndrome, which my best friend, literally everything I ever say, she always says, it's because you have imposter syndrome.
Isn't she helpful?
Always. But it's me feeling like I don't belong, so I have to kind of make up for the lack of intelligence and knowledge I have in whatever space that I'm in. But it's damaging. Like in some ways it's helpful because then I'm always like at a level I feel like I should be at, even though I feel like I never am. But I know like logically like I am probably in a good place. But it's damaging because that's how I feel in all aspects of life. Like in all environments, I feel underprepared.
And it's not logical.
Yeah.
Like that feeling is not based upon reality. No, but it's still there.
Factually, I know it's not, but it's so hard for me to be like, it's like I know it logically, but it's hard for me to still believe that. Definitely. Like I'm still working on that.
And I think everybody can relate to that.
Yeah.
Where the feeling is stronger than the actual reality.
Yeah.
Or even 80 people telling you. That you're enough.
Yeah.
You're doing enough. You'll tell each of those 80 people that they're wrong.
I do that a lot. I'm not gonna lie. But
But I mean that's the piece of it's a real serious issue that impacts tons of people, where it's you believe the feeling
Right.
more than you believe reality.
Yeah, and that rumination is like damaging. Like that has real implications on how your brain actually processes stuff. And so yeah, like I know it's detrimental but it's still so hard. And so when people are just like, well, just like don't do that. I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, I mean,
not you. I mean like other people who don't get the concept.
Yeah.
Or like, why don't you go ask for help? And I'm just like, all right. Oh, cool.
Right. Or why don't you? Well, for me, I mean, in like, I'll take ownership of it. It's like, well, just pretend you're enough to pass this class.
Which I do try to do.
Yeah. Which is probably inappropriate. I don't know. But like for me, which I know sometimes it's like, you just have to pretend for 2 months.
Yeah.
Then, but that's the thing though, is like once you get the degree, you're going to cry for a week.
Yeah.
And then it's going to keep
it's not going to go away.
Yeah. Right.
There's like a split second where you're like, okay, like I'm good. And then like it all just comes flooding back. Like yeah.
Because they've done quite a bit of research on that. And I know one of the big topics is African American women in STEM.
Oh, yeah.
In imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Because what does the research say?
It's alive and well. That's
yeah.
And I just think, it's one of those things that I feel like you said, a lot of people experience it, but understanding like what the implications of the fact that it is alive and well in African American women in STEM, because
or the extent of the damage,
right? Because not only is it detrimental to the person, it's also detrimental to the field, because now you're missing out on a whole bunch of possible questions that could have been asked because you have a different viewpoint that could have been used. But because of this, there, like, some people, like in my case, I feel like I have no voice, so I'm not quote unquote speaking up. I'm not like saying the things that I have, the questions that I have. I'm not asking these questions because I don't feel like they're valid. I don't feel like I'm valid. So,
in this class.
Yeah,
you're
but
saying.
But in general, like for women in STEM, like
okay, because you were saying that you were out a little bit before. You were saying that you did feel validated, that your own personal research questions are valid.
It took people who look and think like me to understand that my question is in fact valid.
Right. But I think this, like, the thing with you had just mentioned is with, it came from when people that looked like you said that it was valid.
Yeah.
And then I know when you met with Dr. Catherine Eden, co-author of $2 a Day.
Great book.
You were able to meet with her for a couple of hours. And most of the, like, 90%, 80% of the research supervisors you've had have been women.
Yeah, actually, well, yeah.
And that's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, when we talk about a lack of women in diversity in STEM fields, and here you were able to have these female mentors.
Right.
And, like, what was the impact of a gender of a mentor?
Yeah. I definitely think it's viewpoint and understanding things that you will also go through.
Right.
I think one of the biggest things that is important in a mentor, for me, is someone understanding what I'm going through. Even if that's not their personal experience, them having the capability to understand that. And so I've definitely had that with all of my mentors, which I am so grateful for.
Yeah. Well, it's just like, because I mean, that was even the thing I think when we were talking about when you, because with Dr. Eden, we had where it was like a 15 trio female students.
That was amazing.
With her. Yeah. And that was one of her big things was how, women have to be out there, leading to make change.
Yeah. I'm taking a Black feminist theory course actually, and that's like the constant message is like, these women have a viewpoint that people are sleeping on, and like their voices need to be heard. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Dr. Eden was amazing.
Yeah, so what did you talk about with her?
So I obviously lack a lot of policy knowledge, but the book was about understanding the different things that people have to do just to survive on barely $2 a day. Like, honestly, most of the stories that were in the book, like, that was a struggle to get. And so it was an interesting way that the book was written. Like, it was narratives on like interviews that they did on, but so if I remember correctly, like they wanted to have a bigger, like more funding to continue something similar to this project because they didn't really end up having that many interviews. And so they're like, we want this to be large scale, which I believe they got the funding to do, which is what they will be doing next summer with like 5,000 participants, I think. But this book was basically about how people have to navigate through the system to get the funds that they need to survive, but also how they don't meet certain requirements because it becomes this whole like cycle of things that you have to go through. But then you can't keep a job maybe because of some other factor that has to deal with the life that you're living. Like, it's just so many things, and understanding that it's not this like one-to-one like relationship. Like, there are other things that influence how you are experiencing everything.
Yeah, and college financial aid is one of those systems that's different when you look at housing voucher systems and SNAP benefit systems and
it's a lot of things.
Yeah, so you have all these systems that have to do with finances.
Yeah, it definitely touches on the fact that a lot of the policies that we see are it's kind of just like some person created this policy, some person, like this whole like ivory tower idea. So, well, this logistically this would make sense, so we're going to do this policy. But then like once the policy is like actually implemented, there's like so many problems. And what she does brilliantly with that book is she kind of does this human interaction and like talks to these people and gets their story. And then you start to see like how there are like common themes with all the stories. And she basically like towards the end, they're like solutions of things that could be done. But then also, at the end of the day, like those are still things that need to be worked on because we just don't know enough. And so that's what they wanted more funding to like do this on a larger scale and see like before and after once like some policy changes were made, which I think is an amazing idea. And understanding this like fluidity of experiences, it's not just like because also, so one of the biggest things that stuck with me is like, and something that you've mentioned too, is this idea of like homelessness and like understanding it doesn't just look one way. It looks like many different things. And like kind of applying that perspective to other things in life. So yeah, I definitely highly recommend that book.
Now, what was your conversation like with her?
Oh my
because
gosh.
It ended with her asking you to apply for a job.
Yeah, so it was,
which again
amazing.
Doesn't happen to many people.
Yeah, so she kind of, and it was nice. She went around the room and like asked everyone what they were interested in. And she also touched on something which was like really amazing because it's also something I'm really interested in studying. It's how people kind of like the cognitive processes people go through and how they view the world and how they like make connections based off of the experiences that they had. So like everyone at the table, all these amazing women, were all like majoring in something with like a minor or a double major that was like atypical like things, and it was amazing and I loved it. And understanding like the way people think, because we were all in similar situations, which is why she ended up meeting with us. But understanding how like we create these types of these perspectives and like we view the world through a lens that's different from what's quote unquote normal, because that's what we've experienced. So like these connections just make sense. Like, and I think that was amazing. And then later I did talk to her and she was like, yeah, I'd really love to see your application for this post-bac, which I am applying to.
Good. You found the application?
Yeah, I also sent her an email and just thanked her for coming. But honestly, that was one of the best interactions.
What about it, though?
I think it's just that she's very easy to talk to. She's knowledgeable of the field, and it's like understanding that it's, like I said, it's not this, she doesn't have this whole like ivory tower mindset. And so she's very like let's talk to the people, let's understand the problems. Like, we don't know, like, we have an idea of what the problems are, but like, okay, let's actually figure out what these problems are. What are things we can change?
Well, it's understanding who the expert is.
Exactly.
The expert is the person living it.
Right. Yeah. Which is the problem you see a lot, is people not thinking they are the experts, and they're not.
And what did the benefit was it, do you think, to hear all of the other women's stories?
Oh, yeah. I'm so glad we did that. Because also, then again, it also goes back to the, like, things can look different ways. Like, we all had similar stories, but it was like, we all had, like, kind of, like, different versions of it, which I liked. And, like, understanding that community, because it also, I think we all were a lot more comfortable with each other after we started to hear everybody else's stories, because, like, we would all be, like, nodding, crying, like, because we understood, and we've, like, been through things similar, you know?
Yeah, it's like the power of a common experience.
Right. Definitely.
Yeah. So how does somebody validate your experience?
I think for me, it's been asking me the right questions, not doubting things that I've said. And sort of like not interjecting. It's kind of like letting my experience be my own. But also like knowing how that fits into other, I don't even know if that makes sense, like, but how that fits into other things, and not kind of like other people creating their own image of what my experience is. And create their own version of what my experience is.
Right.
So the best way I can think about this is when I took cultural anthropology. That was the point where that was my first semester. And that was a point where the idea of there is no like one culture that's like, this is the culture. Like, like
even if
different.
Even if they tell you that.
Right.
Yeah.
Like there are different ways like a community and a society could look. And like not trying to view it like one way.
Right.
Like you can think of it in terms of how you view your community and your society, but it isn't like no judgments on it. Like it's just a different way to see it. It's not well, okay, well they're savage. Like like that's invalid. Like don't do that. And I think that's important.
Right. Yeah, because it's again, it goes back to like what you don't know.
Right.
And so when you try to think like, oh, I know, exactly what this means.
Yeah.
Or that there's one solution. I mean, so it's like
honestly,
you've been talking a lot, and there is no one solution. I'm sitting here, and there's nothing I can say, Joelle, do this. You call this person.
Yeah.
There isn't. It's going to be, we're going to leave here and continue the fight to get you the money and the confidence and, the time and the strength, to finish out the next 2 months.
Oh, please and thank you.
But it's like for anybody to think, it's one of those, the person's wrong when they start a sentence. Well, if you only.
Yep.
If you just.
Why didn't you? Okay.
Yeah. But I do like going back to like of understanding what homelessness looks like. I know that was a path for you too.
Yeah.
Because you had in your fixed mindset, like, I'm fine.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't know if how many times I had to tell you you weren't fine, which I don't know if that was appropriate.
I think it was helpful because like, it's kind of like honestly, that's a coping mechanism. Like people like, you kind of have to like, people have to like rationalize, like just so that they don't, for me personally, I think I just do it because it's like, I can't, acknowledging that it's a problem is like, okay, well now I have to tackle this other problem. And so, but no, you're about to do that because like I was struggling, I needed help. That's like, most likely, I subconsciously came to your office. You know what I'm saying?
Like you knew what I was going to say.
Yeah. But yeah. So
like with the homelessness piece, it wasn't until what was it, a year ago that you realized?
Yeah, because I didn't know what it could look like. Bouncing around, like kind of just like not really having place.
Right. So what's your homeless story?
Well, I guess I can talk about it in college, sort of, but I think a situation where I was like honestly, like I didn't have a place to live was while I was interning at Hopkins. So I had like there was problems with one of the places that I was living at, and so
in Raleigh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had left to go to my internship, and like a month or two before, which actually I just realized I withdrew that semester, the semester right before the internship.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was kind of already going through a lot of stuff, and like getting up was still hard, and so my search for a place like kind of wasn't the best because this is like a couple months before I'm actually leaving to go to Hopkins.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go to Hopkins and my lease is over and I'm still trying to find a place, but I don't have money.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then there's also other problems. Like I didn't have a cosign. I didn't have all these things. So I'm like trying to apply to places while also trying to prove that I'm making enough, which I wasn't. Because you have to prove like three times as much what the rent is.
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't have a cosign, I had to do that, but I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't really making that much.
Mm-hmm.
So that was hard to prove. And then like I'm like, but I'm also trying to pay for applications to places to even prove that in the first place with money that I didn't have. And so it was kind of just like I'm like doing some amazing research with an amazing PI and an amazing program, like top of the top schools, and but at the same time like I'm living in a dorm I'm living in a dorm because we all had to live in the dorm, but I know as soon as I get back I have nowhere to live. Like I don't know how I'm gonna even go about the next semester. Like I couldn't even like live on campus, which was like my last resort, because I had just come back from withdrawing that semester and I knew my brain could not handle, like mentally I could not handle being full-time. But campus only allows you to live on campus if you're full-time. So then I'm like trying to struggle with, okay, well, do I have to go full time, and kind of try and push and make it through, knowing I'm probably gonna have to withdraw again, just so I have a place to live. Like it was a lot of things. Because my dad only lived like 2 hours away, so I was like, okay, well, like it was just a lot of things, and I'm still doing like trying to deal with this while still in this internship program. And then I lucked out, and I had these amazing roommates, and
you're an amazing friend. So you're an amazing person. So then amazing, kind people are attracted to you. Go ahead.
And they had ended up signing a lease, and they needed a roommate, and I didn't have to provide. I needed a proof of income, which I had. Like it's not like I didn't have a job, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But because of that, like I didn't have to like have a cosign and make a certain amount because like they had already gone through that process. So I was just added onto the lease, and then it's been a year, and I re-signed a lease with them. So I'm living with them now.
Good.
And they are amazing, and I love them so much.
Yeah. But I think that's the other thing, too, is, and people get sick of me ranting and raving about why, our students are better than everybody else's students. Is because here you are, you're completing research at the #1 public health school in the country while dealing with all this stuff. Like, what if you had that like mental and physical and spiritual energy freed up,
right,
to devote towards what you're doing? What if you didn't the thought of like where you're going to be, like how you're going to eat, how you're going to take care of your health, where you're going to live, how you have to manage your academic schedule so you can graduate.
Yeah.
Like, what if you didn't have to worry about that?
Right.
Like, what if you didn't have to worry?
That'd be nice. I feel like it would, oh my gosh. I just feel like every semester has been like, not even every minute has just been like, there's some really big problem that I'm like trying to figure out, and I just can't. It's like always trying to deal with something. But to not have that, I can't imagine not having that one. But if I did not have that, that would be amazing. Like to just be able to breathe for a second would be nice.
Mm-hmm. That's why I get offended sometimes with all of the different memes or jokes that they make about not having, enough money or food.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's different. But that's the thing. It's like, it's not funny.
Right. And it's like, and it's so weird too, because it's like, I'm privileged in the situation. Like, even though it's still kind of a crappy situation, like, I'm still privileged because I'm doing better than a lot of other people.
Oh, yeah. And I think this way I look at it is like resources.
Right.
So you have access to tons of, like, you're at a top institution where you have access to, you know, physical resources, intellectual, you know, resources. You have people. You have it's, you know, a relatively safe space with clean air, clean water, you know, heat, etc. You know, kind of caring people, caring friends. But then you don't, the resource of finances or the resource of healthcare.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
It's been an experience. I'll say that much.
But what do you want to, like, what do you want people to know? Like, what do you think the kind of people should learn from your experiences?
That your experience is valid, and that, you know, find your voice. So, and I know we've talked about this a lot, but for me, it's my voice isn't research. I might not have the most refined research question, but I think the concepts in which I'm like trying to develop these questions are valid, and I think for me, that's like kind of my outlet. But that can be just finding your outlet and finding where you feel like your voice is the strongest, and like, you know, using that and doing that. I just think everyone should find that for themselves, and it can be more than one thing. You know, it can be anything. Not just research. Although I am a huge advocate for research, and I feel like everyone should, you know, if you can, try it at least once, because it might turn out different than you think, and, you know, you could be the next pioneer in some of the greatest questions that have ever been asked. You know,
right? And how do they set new goals, almost like new definitions? Because I know that you didn't come into NC State thinking you didn't expect all of this.
Oh my gosh. Be open.
Yeah.
Know that everything changes.
Because that fixed mindset isn't helpful.
It's not. Like, it's not if you apply it in everything. I feel like in some ways it could be helpful, but I mean, honestly, like, I just feel like more things are like I feel like you're given more opportunities if you're open to a lot of different things. And so just knowing that, I mean, in some cases, some people are lucky and everything goes exactly the way that they wanted it to go. But for the rest of us, you know, being open to those other things that might happen and knowing that not all of them will be good, but, you know, kind of, I wouldn't change anything that I've went through, even though they were all, like, not all of them were the best, because I also don't think I would have come up with the questions that I've had, and I wouldn't have, my path wouldn't have been the same without those experiences. And I know it's so cliche to say this, but it's like, you know, I wouldn't really change anything. But I'm always like learning from other experiences. Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping we can change systematically.
Oh yeah,
a lot of things, so that, you know, that would have prevented some of your experiences.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's like, you don't know what you're capable of until you're in the middle of it.
Right.
But you are capable, like, you will come out the other side. So,
yeah.
Rely on your friends.
Yes, definitely rely on your friends.
Listen to Jamal Moss.
Always listen to Jamal.
Yeah. But I think that's the thing, is going to different events and listening to people. And when you see and hear someone that you, like, I want to be you.
Yeah.
You go talk to them. Right?
Yeah, Jamal, I really do want to be you. You're amazing. And yeah, definitely go to things you didn't think you'd go to. You never know. I almost didn't go to that event, and I'm so glad I did, because I met Jamal and I applied to the research program and I got in. And so you honestly never know.
Right, you just have to show up sometimes.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah, just show up, listen.
Because it didn't cost me anything to go to that. And they had dinner. So
Yeah, it was a win-win.
Yeah.
Yeah. That free food led to a whole career.
Yeah, hopefully.
Well, thanks so much, Joelle.
Oh, thank you.
We will talk more, and we'll hopefully have an update on her financial aid situation, and we will talk about what you're going to do post-graduation.
Yeah.
All the jobs that you'll be accepted
Hopefully.
to, and when you take your GRE.
Oh my gosh, yes. If this waiver works out.
Yes, it will. It will. There's no question about that.
TRIO Student Support Services Program and Student Support Services STEM are federally funded college retention and completion programs. These programs focus on academic, personal, and career support for under-resourced undergraduate students. At TRIO SSS and SSS STEM, our goal is helping our students reach their goals. We are currently accepting new students to our program. Apply today. Go to www.ncsu.edu to learn more about student support services at NC State.